Hungarian Folk Tales. The Hare and the Hedgehog. One sunny summer day, a hare and a hedgehog met in the meadow. The hare began to tease the hedgehog and said, "Hey, hedgehog, how can you even walk alone, let run with those stumpy little legs of yours?" This upset the hedgehog. "Well, I'm sure I can run faster with my little legs than you can run with your lanky long ones." Now the hare was upset. "I don't believe that." "Well, if you don't believe it, hare, let's make a wager." So the two of them placed their wagers, and then the hare said to the hedgehog, "Well then, hedgehog, shall we race?" To this the hedgehog said, "Tomorrow morning, when the 8 o'clock train leaves the station." The hare said, "But why not now, hedgehog? Because I have to go home to eat my supper. Let's meet again here tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock sharp." So the hedgehog went home. After they had eaten, the hedgehog told his wife what had happened. "Just imagine, I made a wager with the hare that I can run faster than him." The hedgehog's wife said, "Don't be foolish. How could you possibly run faster than the hare?" "Well, we'll find that out tomorrow morning." The following morning, the hedgehogs got up, ate a hearty breakfast, and went out to the meadow. They didn't go to the place where they should meet the hare, but instead stood at the other end of the meadow. Then the hedgehog told his wife to hide herself in a furrow. He told her, "When the hare arrives, you are to shout out, 'I'm already here, hare!'" Then the hedgehog walked to the far end of the meadow where he met the hare. "Hello there, hare." "Hello there, hedgehog. Are you ready to race?" "Yes, I am." "Then shall we run?" "Yes, let's run." "But how shall we run over such a bumpy field?" The hedgehog said, "It's simple. I shall run in one furrow and you in another, and so we won't bump into each other while we're racing." "That sounds like a very good idea." Then the hare stood ready in one furrow and the hedgehog in another, and the hedgehog told the hare, "I shall count, and when I get to 3, we start to run." And then the hedgehog counted, 1, 2, 3. Then they both began to run, but the hedgehog only ran 2 steps and hid himself deep in the furrow. But the hedgehog's wife was sitting waiting at the other end of the meadow when the hare arrived, and she shouted, "I'm already here, hare!" And the hare said, "That was no good. Let's race again." Then they turned back and began to run in the opposite direction, but this time the hedgehog's wife only ran 2 steps and hid herself deep in the furrow. The hare did his best to run faster than he had ever run before. But when the hare arrived back at the beginning of the meadow, the hedgehog said, "I'm already here, hare." that was no good. Let's race once more." So they turned around and ran back again, but the hedgehog quickly hid in the furrow again. The poor hare ran as fast as his legs would carry him, and when he got to the other end of the meadow, the hedgehog's wife said, "I'm already here, hare." "That was no good," said the hare. "Let's run one last time." But the foolish hare felt dizzy and his legs began to tremble, and he stood in the middle of the meadow, too tired to continue. The little hedgehogs laughed at the silly hare. They had won. The pair of them laughed all the way home, and they are probably still laughing to this very day. Hungarian Folk Tales. The 7 Kids. Once upon a time, in a land far, far away, there lived a mother goat, and the mother goat had 7 young kids. One day the mother goat said, "Now be careful, children, because I'm going to the meadow to bring you fresh grass to eat." "Don't worry, we'll be good," the little kids said. So the old mother goat set off for the meadow, and then she shouted back, "And don't let any strangers in, because I won't be back until evening." The wily wolf had been listening outside all this time. "Well," he thought, "I have my chance at long last." Hardly an hour had passed before the wily wolf went to the window and called into the kids. "Darling children, open the door because I have brought fresh grass for you to eat." The little kids laughed when they heard his gruff voice, "But our mother will only be back in the evening, and her voice is much sweeter than yours." The wolf was furious and ran away until he came to a field full of turnips. There he pulled up a turnip from the ground and ate it to make his mouth dry and his voice sweet. Then he hurried back to the house and called to the kids, "Darling children, open the door because I have brought you fresh grass to eat." And the little kids were about to open the door when the eldest looked out of the window and saw the wily wolf's bony black hand and shouted, "Don't open the door because our mother has white hands, not black." The wolf was furious for a second time. Then he thought for a moment and ran until he came to the village bakery. When he arrived, he asked the baker for a sack of flour to make his hands white, but the baker was busy kneading bread and asked him to wait. But the wily wolf was very impatient and could not wait a moment longer. "I'll be dining on goat meat tonight," and he hurried back to the house. By the time he arrived back, it was late in the day, and he put his hand up onto the windowsill. With his white hand and his sweet voice, the kids were convinced that their mother had returned from the meadow at last. Then the wolf shouted into the kids, "Darling children, open the door because I have brought you fresh grass to eat." And the silly kids jumped for joy because they had fresh grass at last. One kid hid under the bench, the second in the corn bin, the third in the ash bucket, the fourth in the wash basin. The 3 other kids stood petrified in the middle of the room. They were all so terrified that they would happily have hidden in a matchbox, but there was none in the house because their father did not smoke a pipe. Then the wily wolf pulled the kid out from under the bench, the kid out of the corn bin, the kid out of the ash bucket, but the clock door was so small that his long tongue wouldn't fit inside. "Oh, how full I am," he said, and stroked his fat belly. Then the wolf went out to the meadow where he lay under the mulberry tree and soon fell fast asleep. As evening fell, the mother goat returned home from the meadow and nearly died of shock when she saw the door wide open and her little house empty. She began to call, "Kiddie, kiddie, come here." She was sitting and crying when she suddenly heard a tiny voice speak, "Don't cry, mother dear, because I am here." Then the last of her kids appeared, who was delighted to see his mother, but even more delighted to see the fresh green grass. "And where are your brothers?" Then the little kid told his mother how the wily wolf had tricked them. "Oh," his mother said, "so that is who I saw resting in the meadow when I was walking home. Hurry, child, and fetch me a needle, thread, and a pair of sharp scissors." And while her son searched, the mother goat took a rest after a very tiring day indeed. They soon arrived at the meadow, where they saw that the wolf was still sleeping. "Gather rocks, quickly, quickly." Then the mother goat slit the wily wolf's belly open, and the other 6 kids leapt out. "Now let's teach the wily wolf a lesson," the mother goat said, "and fetch as many rocks as you can while he is still asleep." They soon collected a big pile of rocks and packed them into the wily wolf's belly before their old mother stitched it back up again. Then she told her kids to hurry back home because the wolf would surely be in a terrible mood when he awoke. So the 7 kids all ran back to the house and watched from the window to see the wolf awake. When the wily wolf awoke, he was very thirsty and he thought to himself, "I shall go down to the stream and take a drink because the 6 kids in my belly must be really thirsty." The wily wolf struggled to his feet and he smiled to himself when he heard the rocks rumbling in his belly. When he got to the stream, he leant down to take a good drink, but the rocks in his belly were so heavy that he fell headfirst into the water and was washed clean away. The wolf floated on the water, and the stream passed right before the kids' house, and they laughed when they saw the wily wolf wash past. But the wolf could not swim and was drowned in the deep. And if that wily wolf had not drowned, my tale would have never ended. Hungarian Folk Tales. The Pink Pig. Once upon a time, in a tiny village, there lived an old woman who never had a child of her own. And she was once overheard saying that she would not really care if God gave her a puppy, just as long as she had a young one to raise. The years went by, and the woman eventually gave birth to a baby. But it was actually a baby pig. And it was only then she remembered what she had said about God giving her a baby to raise. But what could she do? Now she had a pink pig, and it was her duty to raise it as best she could. The women of the village would gather in the day and gossip, and the pink pig would always sit with its mother and chuckle happily to itself. Let me tell you that the reason your little pink pig squeals so is that it wants to go to school with the other boys and girls in the village. Please don't mock me so, the mother of the pink pig said, who felt sadly ashamed to have such a child. But the rest of the women nagged her until she eventually sent the pink pig to school in the village. And there the pink pig continued to squeal for the teacher until she threw a book at the pink pig to silence it. The pink pig's nose moved from letter to letter until it eventually learned to read like the other children. One day the children all went off to pick strawberries and the pink pig wanted to join them, but its mother wouldn't let it go. But the neighbours nagged her until she eventually agreed. And as the other children all carried baskets, the pink pig wanted one too, and so its mother hung a little basket on its snout. The boy who lived next door was exactly the same age as the little pink pig, and his mother told him to take very good care of the pig that afternoon. Then the pink pig lagged behind the others on their way and it slipped out of its pigskin. And when it took it off, it was plain for all the world to see that the pink pig was the most beautiful little girl in the land. The pretty little girl quickly filled her basket and then slipped her pigskin back on and went to join the others. The boy next door saw all of this, but he did not say a word. All the children's parents began to worry about their offspring, and so they stood out on the road as they waited for them to come home. Look, the pink pig has bought strawberries too. Who could have filled its basket? The pink pig, the boy said, but he said nothing more of what he had seen. When the children grew up, the boys began to court the girls, and the boy next door went to see the pink pig. His father and mother watched forlornly and wondered what their son wanted from such an ugly beast. But the boy next door never gave up, and he only ever visited the pink pig. At last the time came to marry for the boy next door. Whom will you marry, son? Why, the pink pig, of course. Don't shame us, son. We are old and respected, so don't discredit us now. But his father could clearly see that the boy next door was determined to make the pink pig his bride for life. So he gathered his friends together and went to ask for the pig's hand in marriage. Sadly, my son will never get married if the pink pig refuses his request. The peculiar couple were engaged to be married for some time, and people gathered from far and near to witness their wedding, as it was not every day that a man married a pig. After the wedding feast, the young couple went up to the loft as was the custom. The boy next door had told his mother everything, and he had also told her to take good care and burn the pigskin when they threw it down. The band played when the young couple went up to the loft, and it played when they came down again. The pink pig had gone, and a beautiful girl appeared in its place. Everyone was bewildered by the beauty of the girl, who had once been a pink pig. And that is the end of the pink pig's curly tail. Hungarian Folk Tales. The Goat Soldiers. A long time ago, in a distant land, there lived a poor lad. His mother and father both died when he was young, and he was all alone. He was poor, he had no one, and so the poor lad became a shepherd. He was still tending sheep when it came time to become a soldier. So he went straight into the army from his flock of sheep. He served his 3 years, and when he returned, he was so poor that he didn't know what to do or where to look. He had nothing to his name and hardly any clothes. There was a farmer who owned a flock of 30 goats, who needed a goat herd, who could herd the goats during the day and milk them every morning, noon and night, and keep their stable clean and tidy. The young lad happened to be passing and took the job straight away and led the goats out to the nearby meadow. But the young lad was no ordinary goat herd. He was sharp and witty and had learned a couple of clever tricks during his time as a soldier. So he talked to the goats all of the time and ordered them around in a military fashion until they learned to understand his simple commands. He marched them up and down, and by the time he was finished, he could get them to parade around the meadow like a miniature army. One day, the lad saw a rich man in a carriage riding past the meadow, so he drove the herd of goats to the side of the road, where he waved, and the rich man stopped his carriage. The lad said, "The reason I stopped you, sir, is to show you what these goats have learnt to do since I have been their goat herd." The rich man in the carriage was very impressed with their performance and asked, "Who owns these goat soldiers?" "Why, they belong to the local farmer." The rich man was so impressed that he purchased all 30 goats but insisted that the young lad should go and work for him for a month. Then the rich man invited all of his rich friends to come and see for themselves. "I want to show you something very interesting, something you've never seen in your life before." gentleman from a foreign land liked the performance so much that he begged to buy the herd of goats. And so the rich man sold them to him. The foreign gentleman reached into his pocket and paid the price, and the rich man gave all the money to the goat herd, who used the money to buy a plot of land, build a fine house, and buy himself some good clothes, and to live a proper life like other people did. And he lived happily ever after. Hungarian Folk Tales. The Foolish Man. Many, many years ago, in a land far, far away, there lived a man and his wife. And I'm sorry to tell you that the man was not very clever. In fact, the man was a fool. And every day his wife had to tell him what to do and how to do it. The man and his wife had a cow, and one day his wife said, "Why don't you take the cow to market to sell it?" So the man dressed her foolish husband in his best clothes, and he left for the market with the cow. It was a very hot summer's day, and a cloud of flies began to bother the cow and make it run back and forth all over the place. And as they were walking, they met a man with a pig. "Kind sir, wouldn't you prefer to swap your troublesome cow for this pig?" "Oh, but of course I would," he said, and they made the exchange. So now the foolish man had a pig. But the pig was harder to control than the cow had been, and the foolish man did not like it at all. And as they were walking, they met a man carrying a goose. "Kind sir, wouldn't you prefer to swap your troublesome pig for this goose?" "Oh, but of course I would." Well, the goose was no better. It made a terrible mess, its feathers stuck to the foolish man's clothes, and he soon grew tired of carrying it. As they walked, they passed a man by the side of the road who was selling sharpening stones, and the man said, "Kind sir, wouldn't you prefer to swap your troublesome goose for this sharpening stone?" "Oh, but of course I would." So the foolish man was now left with nothing more than a sharpening stone, and he turned around and set off back home. And as he walked, he passed a pond with ducks swimming on it. The foolish man thought he would like to take a duck home for his wife. So he threw the sharpening stone, it sank into the pond, and all the ducks flew away. Now what am I going to do? No cow, no pig, no goose, no sharpening stone, no nothing. So he took off all his clothes and waded into the pond to find the sharpening stone. He searched the pond but could not find it anywhere. And when he came out of the water, he discovered that someone had stolen all of his clothes. So the foolish man was forced to walk home naked. The foolish man was very hungry when he got home, and so he cut himself a slice of bread and went down into the cellar to have a drink of wine. So he put the bread on the step and looked around to see that the dog had made off with it. He then threw the wine tap at the dog, so all the wine spilled out of the barrel onto the floor. A goose sat in the corner hatching eggs, and the goose said, "Gaggle, gaggle, gaggle." "You're going to tell my wife?" "Gaggle, gaggle, gaggle, hiss, hiss." And the goose went on making a terrible din. So the foolish man grabbed the goose, wrung its neck, and threw it out into the yard. Then he poured a bag of flour into the wine and some feathers, rolled around in it, and sat on the eggs. His wife then came down into the cellar and said, "What on earth is going on here?" She looked around at the spilled wine, the flour and the feathers and saw something sitting on the eggs. "What kind of monster is this? You had better say something before I knock your head off. It's me, dear wife. Don't hurt me." "Where's the cow?" "I swapped it for a pig." "So where's the pig?" "I swapped it for a goose." "So where's the goose?" "I swapped it for a sharpening stone." "So where's the sharpening stone?" "I threw it into the pond. I wanted to hit a duck so I could bring it home to you." "And where are your clothes?" "Somebody stole them while I was looking for the sharpening stone." "Oh, you foolish man." And she pulled him off the eggs and gave him the beating of his life. The foolish man's wife never sent him anywhere again after that, and did everything herself because it was safer that way. And that is the end of my story.